It's May 25, 1982. Over the cold, grey waters of the South Atlantic, two pairs of Argentinian A-4 Skyhawk jets roar low across the Falkland Islands. The pilots know the odds they may never return. Leading the formation is Captain Pablo Carballo, his men flying outdated, under-equipped Skyhawks armed with a few unguided bombs and their own determination. Their mission: destroy the British destroyer HMS Coventry and her escort HMS Broadsword. Weeks earlier, Argentina had seized the Falklands known at home as Los Malvinas. British forces were coming. To keep control, the Argentinians had to strike the Royal Navy hard. Now, with intelligence suggesting two warships had moved close to shore to support British ground troops, Carballo saw his chance. If they could sneak in under radar, they might deal a crippling blow. Entering their range, Carballo's voice crackled over the radio. "Don't climb for any reason." The Skyhawks flew dangerously low, hugging the waves and the island's contours. Above them, British radar stations swept the skies, searching for incoming threats. Both ships, Coventry, armed with long-range Sea-Dart missiles, and Broadsword, equipped with shorter-range Seawolf systems, had already claimed several Argentinian aircraft. The only hope for the Skyhawks was to stay below radar, using the terrain as cover. On board HMS Coventry, Captain David Hartdyke stood on the bridge. Aware that Argentinian aircraft had recently launched, British Special Forces had intercepted radio chatter, but no one knew which ship would be the target. Then came the call from radar for contacts, bearing 225, range 30. The alarm klaxon screamed across both ships as crews rushed to battle stations. Coventry's Sea-Dart launchers rotated toward the approaching contacts, but just as they appeared, the signals vanished. Contacts lost over Pebble Island. The radar officer reported. Hartdyke cursed under his breath. Pebble Island's hilly terrain masked incoming aircraft. Worse, his Sea-Darts couldn't engage targets that close. They were now inside the missile's minimum range, too near to shoot effectively. Coventry was a sitting duck. "Broadsword, report your status," he radioed. If anyone could intercept the incoming planes, it was Broadsword. At sea level, Carballo and his wingman, Lieutenant Carlos Rink, spotted the British ships glinting on the horizon. They were only 10 nautical miles out. Starting the attack, Carballo shouted. They dropped even lower. Skimming the waves, sea spray lashed their canopies, coating them in salt. Flying this low made radar locks nearly impossible, but also left no room for error. Aboard Coventry, the radar finally caught them again. To make matters worse, a British Harrier jet was returning to the area. "Captain, friendly aircraft 20 miles out," an officer warned. Enemy and friendly aircraft were in the same zone. Should he fire? "Turn the Harrier away," he barked. "Fire missiles." The Sea-Dart operators tried to lock on, but the system couldn't track the low-flying Skyhawks. The radars flickered uselessly. On board Coventry, the tension was unbearable. The Skyhawks were racing in, too low, too fast, and the missiles wouldn't lock. Hartdyke could only pray Broadsword's Seawolf would do its job. On Broadsword, sailors watched the incoming darts merge into one blip on the radar. The Skyhawks were flying so close together that the computer mistook them for a single aircraft. But then, the blip split into two. The missile guidance system froze, unable to process the sudden change. The systems crashed. Someone shouted, "Too late." The Argentinians were seconds away. Lookouts on Coventry saw them now, to silver jets racing toward them just above the waves. Deck gunners opened fire, the ship's 4.5-inch gun booming while sailors manned machine guns and rifles, firing desperately. Carballo saw tracers slicing through the air, water erupting all around him. He was seconds from being torn apart. The Skyhawks veered, shifting their aim from Coventry to Broadsword. They released their 1,000-pound bombs, which skipped across the ocean's surface like stones. One sank harmlessly short, but the other slammed into Broadsword's side only to deflect upward, tearing through the deck and out the other side before plunging into the sea without detonating. The bombs hadn't exploded. Behind them, another flight of Skyhawks was approaching, led by First Lieutenant Mariano Velasco and Ensign Jorge Barrionuevo. Their bombs were smaller, just 250 kilograms each, but more reliable. On Coventry, the radar lit up again. Hartdyke ordered a hard turn to starboard to bring the Sea-Darts to bear. This time, the operators achieved a lock. A missile roared off the deck, streaking toward the incoming jets. But as Velasco's flight descended even lower, barely skimming the waves, the missile lost its lock and veered off into the sky. On Broadsword, the crew frantically rebooted the Seawolf system. The radar blinked back to life, catching the new attackers just in time. The launchers swiveled, but just as they did, HMS Coventry crossed directly in front of them, blocking the shot. The captain tried to maneuver, but it was too late. Velasco and Barrionuevo raced in. Coventry's gunners opened up again, the ship's cannons and machine guns firing everything they had. But one by one, their systems failed. The main gun misaligned, the 20mm anti-air gun jammed. Desperate sailors grabbed rifles and opened fire from the deck. It was useless. The Skyhawks were already upon them. "Brace, brace, brace," the intercom shouted. Velasco lined up the target and squeezed the trigger. His 20mm cannons spat fire, shredding the destroyer's superstructure. Then he released his bombs. Two dark shapes dropped from under his wings and plunged toward the sea. They hit Coventry's hull to dull thuds that reverberated through the ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, seconds later, both bombs detonated. The twin explosions ripped through Coventry's hull, one beneath the bridge and another in the forward engine room. The first destroyed the operations room and killed several crew instantly. The second severed power and propulsion, leaving the ship dead in the water. Velasco pulled up hard, roaring past the doomed destroyer. Behind him, black smoke billowed into the sky. "Boom, dude," his wingman shouted. "Long live the nation." The fall of HMS Coventry. Inside the Coventry, chaos erupted. Fires raged through the corridors, and thick smoke filled every compartment. Captain Hartdyke staggered to his feet, disoriented and half-deafened. The intercom was dead. Alarms blared uselessly. He stumbled through twisted metal and debris, hearing the cries of his men. The ship groaned under him. Listing badly, he finally reached an exit and emerged into the freezing Atlantic air. What he saw amazed him. Amidst the destruction, his crew was calm, disciplined, and efficient. Training had taken over. Teams worked to rescue trapped sailors, treat the wounded, and deploy lifeboats. Others stayed behind to help shipmates reach the deck. Hartdyke tried to stay with his ship as long as possible, but the hull continued to roll. Water rushed in. He ordered the final evacuation. Within minutes, Coventry began to capsize. Hartdyke climbed onto the upturned hull, refusing to abandon ship until the last sailor was clear. Only when everyone else was safe did he climb into the final life raft, watching as the destroyer, the pride of the Royal Navy, slipped beneath the waves. Broadsword and British helicopters rushed in, pulling survivors from the freezing water. Out of Coventry's 287 crew, 170 were rescued. 19 men lost their lives. Back at base, all the Argentinian pilots made it home safely. For them, it was a stunning victory, proof that courage and skill could overcome superior technology. But it was also bittersweet. Despite their success, Argentina's hold on the Falklands was slipping. Within weeks, British forces would reclaim the islands. Still, the attack on HMS Coventry became legendary, a moment when a handful of pilots flying outdated jets struck one of the Royal Navy's most advanced warships, and won. The years since, both sides have honored the courage shown that day. Captain Hartdyke survived, and later met his adversaries in peace, expressing admiration for their bravery. The sinking of HMS Coventry remains a tragic but defining episode of the Falklands War, a reminder that in modern warfare, technology means nothing without the men who wield it. For Argentina, the strike was proof that determination could challenge even the world's greatest navy. For Britain, it was a lesson written in fire and steel: never underestimate your enemy. When the waters of the South Atlantic finally calmed, they held the wreck of HMS Coventry silent testimony to one of the most daring low-altitude attacks in aviation history.